The 228. It's based off of my senior thesis for Cranbrook. My thesis there focused on these 228 pieces that I made based on my experience with depression. So I originally made a list of 101 words that I associate with depression. And then I made each one of those words into a piece. And some of them I ended up making more than one for that word. And that is just because maybe I thought that one didn't end up being enough to describe that word. And that's how we're getting over 101. Also, I made a list of the opposite of that 101 words, and I made a piece for each of those as well. So it should have been 202, but I ended up making extra. I think language is really interesting in itself, but there's a lot that language can't explain. Although I started with those words, even reading that list, I still felt like it wasn't actually a clear representation of my depression. I like the portrait idea because like each one is kind of like a snapshot of an emotion or a day in my life or in somebody's life dealing with depression. It's like not all of them are sad. Although I'm using all these different types of methods to create something, they're very similar. So like welding is a lot like using a hot glue gun. And sewing is also kind of like welding. You have your two materials and you're using a third material to connect them. I think knitting is the one that kind of stands out as something different because you're creating the basis yourself. That's actually something that I'm just starting, is the knitting, so that's new. So I also think of it as like a feminine versus masculine. I feel like my metal work is a lot more masculine than my sewn work. And I think that has something to do with the way I grew up. My sister and I, we both grew up with a mom who wanted us to be super girly and a dad who was wanting 2 boys and got 2 girls, so he was like, raised us as if we were his sons to a point. We went into the garage with him, all that stuff, so I think there's always been like that weird dynamic between masculine and feminine in my life. Family's been huge in my work. So my dad is a mechanic, and he had me out there welding with him and working on cars and that kind of stuff. And so in high school, I was like, I'm gonna take woods and art and engines and welding, and so I took all of those classes. If I think about like my grandpa, he's a tool and die maker. I was always in his shop looking at things he was making. My grandma Carr was a quilter, and I was always there talking with her, watching her do that. And then she taught me how to embroider for a little bit. It was crazy how much art was in my life because of my family. This building is amazing. This gallery space is amazing. It's beautiful, and I am just so thankful to be here.